So I'm going to give it another go and just talk about Macbeth. Macbeth. When we started this year, I read Macbeth. It's been a long time since I read Macbeth, probably like 20 years or something, and I knew I was going to have to teach it, and so I read it from the old university complete works of Shakespeare, the Bard, and I read it, and actually I was surprised at how. Well, the first thing that I came across is they're not very long. They're bloody short. You can actually knock the entire thing out. Look, there's all it is. It's it starts off at 999, page 999, which quite weirdly, if you turn it upside down, is 666. But we won't go there. And then it starts off, and then it's at 1027, so it's 28 pages long. It's bugger all. But it's hard. I mean, I even had I had a rough time dealing with the language, and my book doesn't really have kind of much in the way of annotations, except for what I've made on the side, so it doesn't translate into modern English, or even doesn't really have a glossary for words. So, it's not easy stuff unless you get used to it. The more you look at it, and the more you actually go, actually, you know what, this is it's English. Stop freaking out. You realize that you know a lot more than you think you do, and you plow through it. But there still are some bits where I'm like, what? What was that? You kind of just skip over stuff, but you can do it. You can read through it, and actually after a while you start getting the kind of flavor of it, and you start getting the rhythm, and you kind of get the Shakespeare style, and you kind of get this sort of appreciating that you're reading a play. I was just watching myself, and that was kind of weird, but so it takes a bit of practice. And what do I think about, if I had to write about Macbeth, what would I write about? What would I be looking for and focusing in on? And for me, there's the sort of tried and true themes in Macbeth are really still the ones that are, I think they're still powerful things to engage with because they're universal, and they perplex us, and they haunt us to this day. Our own politics is possibly not as removed from what was happening in the time that Macbeth is taking place. So, hundreds of years ago. I mean, Shakespeare writes this 500 years ago, and the play is, from what I recall, sort of something that takes place, even hundreds of years earlier, than 100 or so years earlier than his time. So, but it's still, the things still resonate. I mean, things like power, how power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Macbeth, we start off, I think, sort of feeling quite happy for Macbeth. He's kind of, he has just sort of slaughtered his way, I suppose, but in victory he's turned the tide of the battle, and he's won it for the King of Scotland, and his fortunes are on the way up, and as he's fairly young man, and you kind of feel for him, you kind of identify with him as the hero. things are going well in the Macbeth world, and so it's not actually until he pursues the kernel that's been planted in his head by the witches, and then encouraged by his wife to actually do the foul deed, where we kind of go, oh, this is going to go all bad, isn't it? And maybe it didn't have to be like that. And when you see this this all the time, where who we perceive as being good people that we may vote for in a democratic election, once they get in a position of power, we're often let down by them, and in horrendous fashion. We sometimes find abhorrent things about people in power and what they do once they get that power and how it corrupts them. And that story is universal. It happens again and again and again, and it still happens to this day. So that for me, that's still a perplexing and core message of the play. And I think if you are, and it's an easy kind of way to respond to a multitude of statements that might be put forward in an NCEA type question, an exam environment. You sort of can't go wrong, at least by studying around that theme. I don't think there's going to be a lot of content on it, and you can dig quite deep in there, particularly when combined with the question of exactly what impact Lady Macbeth has on Macbeth's decision to kill Duncan and essentially usurp the throne. She's also after a certain amount of power, and there is an implication that that she's kind of trying to make up for the fact that she has lost a child earlier. There's not much detail given on this, but she does imply quite early on that that she has lost a babe. There's the line, I can't remember what the actual line is. The quote is that, I know what it's like to have had the babe suck at my breast, or something like that. So there's a sort of a real brief mention of it. Macbeth doesn't really seem to react much to it in a fatherly sense, or anything like that. But you get the impression that she has lost a child. And some films actually do make light of this, particularly the 2015 one with what was his name, Michael Fassbender, I think. The opening scene in that is removed from anything we actually see in the play itself, and has Lady Macbeth and Macbeth sort of wrapping what looks like it might be a child and putting it into a grave. So they kind of start off that film adaptation anyway with the implication that Lady Macbeth has lost a child, and that this pursuit of power is partially a substitute for that. So those two. So then you're talking about a couple of, the power that is sort of predestined upon Macbeth by the witches, or the sort of the pursuit of power by any means necessary. Really, that is embodied in the character of Lady Macbeth, and what she kind of, and then in a way, her pursuit of her. How she motivates her husband is kind of by manipulating his kind of power over their relationship. She sort of emasculates him in a sense by saying that she would do the act, unsex me here is kind of this suggestion that she becomes the male in this relationship, and therefore kind of is the one to usurp the power, or and she kind of emasculates Macbeth, suggests that he doesn't have the kind of metal to perform this act, as a way of kind of pushing him towards this destiny. So you could talk about power in relationships. You could talk about and then you could talk about how Macbeth is then subsequently corrupted by his acquisition of this power, and how he sort of starts off as a fairly nice guy, but quickly turns and is corrupted, essentially sort of made mad somewhat by this power. So I think sticking on those simple kind of themes and then just kind of working them and seeing how they fit with the statements is a fairly decent strategy. You probably all know how to do this. I'll see if I can flip over. It doesn't really seem to. It often... Oh, there we go. I did it. If you want to look at some of these, some of the past questions, the easiest thing to do is to Google the words NZQA, which is the organization that sets the exams, Level 3 English Exemplars. So if you put your level and then English Exemplars, you'll come up with the English Annotated Exemplars page. And there you should find... was that? No, that's not the right page. Here we go. It'll come up with a page that looks like this. And you're looking at this: respond critically to specific aspects of a studied written text. So that's the external. And then you've got, you can ignore this one, profiles of expected performance, but you've got an examination paper 2017. And then you've got some answers in excellence, and merit, and achievement. And then examination paper 2016. Excellence, merit, achievement. So you've got 2015 all the way down to 2013. So you've got a substantial amount of questions to look through. Let me just actually pick one from. Let's pick this 2013 one just for a little bit of a look. See what kind of questions they've got here. But remember, these aren't really questions at level 3. They're statements which you're asked to respond to. So discuss the extent to which you agree with your chosen statement. So the extent with which you agree with the statement. Respond critically to the statement by making close analysis of the text. So you still need to do the close analysis. That's the, looking at the language features, looking at the characters, thinking of the setting, all of those, the narrative voice, all of those things that we, for years associated with analyzing a text. But you have to agree or disagree with this. I mean, I would probably tend to pick one where you agreed with it rather than disagreed with it. I think that's a little bit easier. So, but you have to do that. So let's have a look at some of these statements here after what we've just been talking about. So we're thinking about power. I'm going to see if one will fit into that. The opinions of a writer are made powerful for an audience only when they are presented using a clever or engaging writing style. Nope. That one is designed. We got to remember that if you sort of put yourself in the mind of these people that are making the exam questions, they need to create a range of questions that could possibly hit all of the text types that anyone in New Zealand may have studied. So that could be novels, could be New Zealand novels, could be plays, it could be classic works of literature, it could be anything. So you're going to get a range of questions, and that means that some questions are not appropriate. For that one, for us, the opinions of a writer made powerful for an audience only when they're presented in a clever or engaging writing style. I don't think that works for Shakespeare. I mean, he's in clever and engaging, but I think what that question is designed for a text that has a very idiosyncratic style or aspect of its writing. Deep down, we are more excited by the attributes of the villain than those of the hero. That one is actually kind of leaping out to me, and I haven't even read the rest one, so I'm going to make a little note of that. The thing I like about that one is that, this is a play predominantly about an individual. It circles the play, is the rest of the characters are essentially just satellites around this gravitas of this main character, Macbeth. And he kind of starts out like a bit of a hero. Well, he does start out like a hero, and he becomes a villain. And so that one, and I think why we keep watching it is that we kind of know what's in store for this villain, and watching his demise is actually kind of exciting. Third one is language. I might bump this up a little bit. Language must be carefully selected and specifically crafted to affect our emotions. No, thank you. A writer's task is to make insignificant things significant. Yeah, that could be right, I suppose. It's not great, but it's not really coming up to my Macbeth power thesis. But appreciating the setting of a text is key to unlocking the writer's purpose. Nope. Written texts warn us that the greatest danger is often what people say, not what they do. Maybe, but I don't think so. The brevity of a text enables us to empathize more easily with the experiences of the characters. I don't know what that one's for, but literature offers us the opportunity to view protagonists breaking boundaries or taboos. That's a possibility. The use of symbolism is the best way to shed light on the darker or deeper messages of a text. Regardless of the genre, the writer's voice will always be unique and distinctive. I think I'm still going back to my first choice. And you know what? Often that's the way these things go. If you find yourself having a kind of a gut reaction to one of the statements, that's usually a good sign that is that's the one for you. So deep down, we are more excited by the attributes of the villain than those of the hero. So I'm comfortable with that one, and now I would start brainstorming the attributes of the villain. Maybe I'd even brainstorm what the attributes of the hero are, and then start seeing how this could fit into my thesis. And I think quite easily we could see that, the pursuit of power in itself is not usually what the hero is in it for. The hero is usually somebody who's in it for a higher purpose, and the villain is the one who's in it for money or fame. So you can see how I'm starting to kind of weave in already the theme that I knew well from the play or from my text, which was about power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and how this could working this notion about that I know about the play could work in with one of the questions, with one of the statements in the exam. So I think the key is you need to know, at this level 2 and 3, they're really looking to see too that you have engaged with the text on a deeper level, and knowing well a theme and being able to talk about that theme in relation to the statement that you've been given is key to having a good response, having an interesting response as well. So that might that'll probably do me for tonight, I think. I don't know if that's been any help. I suppose if you were doing Macbeth, it might be worth it. But I think one of the keys there is if you are, even just going through some of the exemplars as well, some of the responses, or looking through the questions, it could be, and then doing a little brainstorming. But, I find that it's not, although I haven't done an exam for a long time, I must confess, it's not like I sit around as a teacher doing random exams, but I tend to use some of the tension that's built up into the setting to sort of drive me forward in the past. And so I don't think I would write out huge practice essays. I would just use them to see that I could do some brainstorming really quick. I could get onto a little bit of a groove quickly, and within sort of 15 minutes I could have an outline. I'd be ready to take a breath and go. That's what I would be doing in the lead up. I would be studying some of these themes, knowing a couple of themes, a couple of the predominant main themes. I would go through some of those NZQA statements and just have a bash at, like, okay, I'm going to pick one real quick. I'm going to time myself 15 minutes. I'm going to pick one. I'm going to do a bit of brainstorming, and I'm going to get an idea of how I might actually structure or attack this question. I wouldn't write out the whole essay. I'd use the sort of pressure of the exam environment to actually push me through that part of it. And I would practice the attacking the question and the brainstorming by going through some of those NZQA things. All right, so good luck if you are studying for one of the upcoming English exams, and if you are doing Macbeth, I hope this was might have been a little bit of a help. Just don't panic, stay relaxed, but do a little bit every night, and kia kaha.